This is the farmhouse where I grew up, where my father grew up, where my grandfather grew up, where my great-grandfather grew up. The main house was built in 1860. We got electricity in 1943 with the Rural Electrification Act. And now what I am doing is I'm removing the majority of the 1960 updates and reverting the era back to somewhere between 1920 and 1950. I'm going to show you each room in the order that I did them years ago. While I am no more of a carpenter or a designer than any member of my family has ever been, I'm doing it to suit me and my tastes. Well, the farmhouse is finally going to get a kitchen table. So we decided to build one. Years ago, I had acquired a 50s style kitchen table. It was beside the road, setting out in the rain, and the top was ruined, but the base looked pretty good. So we kept the base and trashed the top, and we were always going to do something with it. And I got put in a barn and forgotten about. So anyway, I dragged it out and cleaned it up a little bit. The chrome wasn't the best, as you can see on the legs. It's not the greatest. However, it's good enough for a starter. So I steel wooled it and cleaned it up with alcohol. And then I took Rust-Oleum Rusty Metal Primer and sprayed it. Then I used black hammer paint from Rust-Oleum and gave it 2 good coats. And at this point, the legs are looking pretty darn good. Then at Home Depot, I bought these Scotch felt pads and put them on the bottom of the legs because what was on the bottom of the legs had rotted away. It was probably rubber, I'm guessing, but it had rotted away and it was gone. It was just a hole. So now we've got something that we can slide it around the floor and not damage the brand new floor. Next was to come up with a way to attach the tabletop that I'm going to show you in a minute to the legs. So I got the idea to take these chunks of 3/4 plywood, and what I did was I found a fender washer and a drywall screw that would hold down those squares without going through to the other side. And there's showing the drywall screw and the fender washer. Then when you set it on the floor with the pads screwed on, that is what it's going to look like, except it is going to be flipped over. So I was checking there to make sure that all of them would lay flat on the floor. I had to tweak it a little bit to get it to lay flat because being an old table, it had been tweaked a little bit. The last thing is, what are we going to use for a tabletop? Well, years ago on the island, we had decided that we were going to have an extension, as you saw in the previous chapter. And we tried multiple things, as you saw. So the last thing we were going to try is this sheet of hard maple butcher block. Well, it laid on the island for quite a while and nothing ever happened. And we just decided, okay, we're going to take that and make a table. So this is how we made the table for the farmhouse. All right, let's see if we can cut this. Now, after a bit of measuring to get the table centered exactly on the legs, or the legs on the table, I'm going to put in these blocks so that I can lift the table off and set it right back down on. And what I'm going to use as a spacer is just a thin piece of cardboard. So there's the cardboard, and I'm just going to use some tight bond glue. And I'm hoping this is going to work. So I want to put the spacer and then the block and that spacer is loose, you can see. There will be room in case the boards expand with moisture. So that's how we're going to attach the table to the legs. It's just going to set on. Alright, the glue has dried, and I'm going to pull the spacers. And we'll see if this idea works. Okay, there's all the spacers. So, pick it up and set it back down. And it drops right in. So there's the proof of concept that I can flip this over and it'll work. Well, I almost forgot the telltale mark right there that is going to allow me to get it oriented correctly in the future. Okay, now that we know that the legs will lock in and hold the table, I'm going to seal the bottom with some shellac. What I've got is Zinsser Bullseye Amber Shellac. That's the stuff I've used for a couple of my doors that were original shellac, and my desk in the living room where I gave it 7 coats, and also the kitchen door, I gave that 7 coats. So I've just got a foam brush and I'm just going to kind of slather it on, but make sure I don't get it on the edges, because I do not want that to run down, because I'm going to finish it with Old Masters Natural and then 3 coats of poly, basically just like I did for the kitchen cabinets. So I've just got to go around and do this whole thing. And with the magic of video, the next time you see this, it'll be done. So, as you can see, I'm just finishing up. It doesn't have to be pretty. It's going to be on the underside of the table. And the important thing is that I've got a coat of sealing shellac on it. So, there it is. Not pretty, but it's the underside, and I'm going to call it good enough. So now that I'm done with the shellac and the sealing, I'm going to attempt to pick this table up by myself and get it up on the legs, because it is quite heavy. Okay, now it's just a matter of getting it to align. I kind of figured it was going to be like this. When you get it close, it starts to tip in. This may not be the best way to put the table on and have it so that you can take it on and off, but it's what I came up with. I think it just dropped in. And it did. There you go. And we'll be able to move the table around. And of course, over here, the banquette's going to go. We just haven't got that finished yet, but there's the table ready for the finishing. Now what we intend to do here is we're going to cut the corner of the table. We decided on 3 inches and 3 inches. And the reason why we did that, follow me. Living room, bathroom. If you go back to the bathroom book, that curve right there, that's 3 inches. So, in keeping, we are going to keep the same 3 inches, chop off the corners, and then round it, probably by hand, and it'll be the same but different. Alright, let's see if we can get this cut. Well, that was easy. So now it's just a matter of doing it for the other 3 corners, rounding that over. Okay, there it is with the 4 corners cut. I tend to think that it makes the table look a little bit lighter. I don't know whether that's, I mean, you come around and look at it like that. It does, taking those corners off, it makes the table look a little, I don't know, the only term I can come up with is lighter. What we're trying to do is take the sharp edges off, just round it just a little. We're using 150 grit on a Harbor Freight sanding block. And when we get it to the point that she tells me I like it, then we'll do the other 3, and then we'll have to address these sharp edges top and bottom. So we made a paper template on the first corner when she told me that I was happy with that. And then it's just a matter of taking it over and laying it against the next one. And when you get that to match, something like that, then you know you got it for all 4. Okay, what she's attempting to do now is work on the edges. She wants them just kissed. What I intend to do now is use this Old Masters, get it so you can see it here, Old Masters wiping stain in natural. It's what we've used on all the cabinets. So I've got a foam brush. I'm just going to start applying it. Going to give it a nice glow, I guess you would say. Well, that worked well. We just had a failure. Alright, we'll see if we can fix that. Okay, we've got another brush. We'll try it again. Those are just those cheap Harbor Freight brushes. I don't expect much, but I expect a little more than what I got. Now after we get this on, then I want to do 2 coats of satin poly. I don't believe it. That one just broke too. Wow. They're crap. Alright, we'll go for take 3. Now while I've got more of those wide ones. I'm thinking that the pin is all the same, so I'm going to go with a slightly smaller one. And see if that works out any better. Too much strain on that little plastic pin must be. Either that or they're making them a whole lot cheaper, because they shouldn't fail like that. So that's what it's going to end up looking like. We'll cut to when I'm more done. So I got just a little bit left, and you let it set for, I think it said 10 to 20 minutes. And then take a cloth and wipe it off. So that's pretty much the color I'm going with. It is going to get a little darker over time. Plus, when I put the poly on, it will darken it a little bit, make it more golden. Alrighty, it's been setting for about 10 minutes. So they want you to, according to the instructions, wipe against the grain. So that's what I'm going to do. That's what you get, apparently. So then they want you to go with the grain. And that's what you get. Flip that around. I've got a nice blonde looking color, which is what I wanted. I don't want dark. I've had enough walnut. This kitchen is mostly maple, so that's what I wanted. And I think that looks pretty darn good. If you don't happen to like it, you probably won't get invited to dinner. This is now 2 days later. I let the Old Masters Natural Stain Oil Finish dry for 2 days. Now I've got a gray Scotch-Brite pad, and I'm going to go over just to take care of any little nubbins. And do a quick scrub around the outside. Just take the nubbins off. Now wipe that down, and then I've got a can of Old Masters Satin Poly. Then I've got Old Masters Gloss Poly. So like I did with the cabinets, I'm going to put 2 coats of satin because it's too hard to put 3 coats of gloss and have it really nice. The satin, you can just basically slap it on. So 2 coats of that to build it up. Then 1 coat of this to give it a nice gloss finish. I'm going to put the first coat of the satin poly on. So what I used before was something like this. This is a Linzer DIY Edge. That's what it is. It's got a replaceable fuzzy pad, and I just put it on. It wasn't this particular brand, but that's all I could get, and I just sweep it. You don't have to be too fussy when it's satin. So we'll see how this works. And it's just about that fast. After this dries, I'll rub it out with that gray pad again. The thing about this is I don't get hardly any bubbles. That's the nice thing about this pad. So then it's just a matter of going around the edges. There's probably going to be some of you are going to say, oh no, you're doing it all wrong. Well, that's what I did with all the cabinets. There you go. There's a couple dry spots. As I walk around it, the light catches it. But for the most part, it's pretty good. Well, it's the next day, and the first coat is dried. Now I'm going to take the gray Scotch-Brite pad and rub it out. Take care of any little nubbins. And see about putting a second coat on. And then just quickly around the outside. Actually, it's looking surprisingly good with only one coat on. It really is. Now we're ready for the second coat. See how that goes on. Quite impressed with the pad. It seems to do a good job. But it did on the cabinets. I'm not sure whether this is the absolute correct way to do it, but I seem to get a pretty decent finish. after I get it all covered, then what I want to do is look at it kind of at an angle with the lights and the sun, see if there's any dry spots that I missed something. Because invariably I do. So after the second coat is dried, to get an absolutely smooth finish, I'm going to take some 600 wet dry sandpaper and go over the top. And I'm kind of thinking I may put one more coat of poly of the satin. I don't know that I'm going to go with the gloss. I'm getting quite a nice finish with the satin. And maybe for the cabinets, but not for this this top. If I put the gloss on, I think it's only gonna go dull anyway with use. So I'm kind of leaning towards just keeping it all in satin because it looks pretty darn good. And that feels quite good. Well, I made a decision that normally I do 2 coats of Old Masters satin and then 1 coat of Old Masters gloss. However, I'm liking the satin finish on this table, so I'm going to go with 3 coats of satin. So you saw me rub it out. So now all I got to do is put this last coat on, and because I've already rubbed it out. And if you watch my short on brushes, you know that I've got a good foam brush here. I'm going to go across and do this, and then we'll come back when I'm about done. So I'm just finishing up right now, and I'm thinking it looks pretty good. We'll see after it dries. There may be a spot or two that I may have to put another coat on, but I'm hoping that I pretty much got it. So I'm going to finish off the table by rubbing it out with some 2000 grit wet dry sandpaper, just to take care of the last few little nubbins. Because after you do that, it is very smooth. It's not high gloss because I used the satin. The gloss isn't going to hold up on this table anyway. I just liberally use water. If you've never used wet dry sandpaper. And all I have to do is just wipe it down and maybe put a coat of wax on it. Some kind of a protectant maybe. And I think that's a little bit right there. Yeah, that's not bad. That's pretty good. Okay, that pretty much does the top. All I got to do is put a little bit of wax on it, call it good.